Hello, everybody. Today we are going to be looking at the Samish defense, or the Samish variation in the King's Indian defense. But this time we are going to be looking at it from Black's perspective. The last video we looked at the Samish from White's perspective and went over several miniature games just to detail the general plans and ideas for White. And so now in this video we are going to look at it from the Black side of the board. So there's going to be basically three scenarios that we are going to be looking at from Black's perspective. One, you can see here on the board where White castles on the Queen side and Black is castled on the King side. So you have opposite wing attacks here. Then we have the classical scenario, of course, where White castles on the King side and Black is castled on the King side. And the last scenario we will be discussing is when White kind of delays castling, period, and kind of stays in the middle of the board. So those are our three scenarios. So let's get right into it. And we are going to look at the scenarios where White is going to be castling on the Queen side. Our first game is from 1928. A player named Wilhelm Schelfhout with the white pieces versus Arpad Vaya with the black pieces. So we're going to go through this game rapidly. Of course, we have our King's Indian. F3 denotes our Samish variation. Castles, bishop e3, knight bd7, queen d2. Of course, if you want to know White's ideas, just look at the previous video. b6. This is not common, but this is early King's Indian, so don't worry too much about the theory here. Just focus on the general idea. So we can see we have opposite wings castling, and so certain principles will apply. Usually dynamic play is the way to go, and what I mean is that pawns are not as valuable. Usually in many games, what will break an opponent's back is a dynamic pawn sacrifice or a timely piece sacrifice. So look at Black's play here and try to, just think of it as a theme, right? Don't necessarily try to remember variations, but just general ideas. So we see White's attack get started with g4, knight e5, and this sets White with a little bit of a dilemma because White would like to, bring his knight out, but of course then the c4 and f3 pawns would be attacked. Okay, and of course if he brings his knight to h3, then the f pawn is unprotected. Sorry about that. So bishop e2 is played, and now this timely sacrifice b5, a takes b5, bishop takes b5, bishop a6. So similar position to a Benoni or Banco gambit here. Bishop takes, rook takes, queen e2. So as you can see, White is up material, but the A and B files are wide open. So Black immediately starts his attack. The king evacuates, and now rook b8. And Black has a nice initiative here. King e1, c4, and now d3 is ready to be occupied by this knight. So now bishop c1, knight fd7, f4, trying to kick the knight out, but to no avail. Knight d3 check, giving up the exchange. Often a rook on the third or sixth rank, a knight on the third or sixth rank is definitely worth a rook. Queen d3, and Black's pieces just flood in. Queen f3, bishop takes c3, b takes c3, and rook e4. This devastating move with pressure here, and we can see the king is just driven back to its original square. Alright, so what do we learn from that game? Well, we learned quickly, okay, that in opposite wing castling, that he who strikes first, right, is often going to have a good game, and don't try to hold on to the pawns. If you can make a timely sacrifice of a pawn to open up the position and get your attack started, by all means do it. So the initiative is of the utmost importance here. Another example of White castling on the queen side between a player named Erno Garibin versus Sath from 1934. Have the center is closed, and now opposite side castling. Notice immediately a6 is played with the idea of playing b5, d7, h4, h5, slowing down. This is an option. It weakens the king side for black, but it slows down white's attack also. So it can be a double-edged sword here. King b1, b5 immediately. Again, the pawn sacrifice to open up the files. Knight a6, knight c7 is played, and now knight c5. This forces white's hand. Bishop takes c6, d takes c6, queen b8. The theme here is dynamic play, right? Not so much holding on to material here. Rook eb8, and look again, a and b files wide open. Black, excuse me, white starts playing passively. Bishop h6. This move is, of course, a move of desperation because, after all, if you think about it, this bishop is bad already. There's no need to trade it off at this point, right? The e5 pawn is blocking it, but um, white is kind of playing, traditional moves. Okay, let's trade off the dark square bishop and try to exploit the dark squares. But at this point, it's too slow. Queen a4. The rook drops down. Of course, one of the ideas is just bishop takes, drawing the queen away. The rook comes back to c1. Now the bishop is attacked. Notice the importance of the initiative. Now he takes, the queen is drawn away, and now simply rook takes c4. Rook a3. Of course, miscalculation because white has this check. Excuse me, black has a check. King a1, rook takes, b takes, and knight d3. One last game. This game is from 1983 between Hans Ray with the white pieces and Jonathan Mestel with the black pieces. Again, Samisch or Samisch, I think that's the correct pronunciation. And already we see, some modern improvements, of course, in the King's Indian by this time. Black is immediately ready for his counterplay against the queen side castling. White starts his attack. Black stalls it with h5 and castles queenside anyway. And there's b5 already. At least here it's not a sacrifice. So knight f4. Black takes. Bishop takes c4. And with this, even though the b file is open, white is hoping to be able to use his pieces to protect the king. e5, d takes, knight takes, bishop drops back. Queen e8, and now knight fd5, couple of trades, and bishop e6, queen a5, bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, and now c5. Rook d2, c4, bishop c2, rook comes to b5. Again, pawn sacrifice, queen takes d6. Brilliant move by Mestel here, and notice this bishop diagonal is free and clear as soon as this knight moves. So that's the idea behind this sacrifice. Rook takes b2, queen takes a6, queen b8, queen a3, and now c3. Rook d4, knight takes f3, and just rook d5. Knight d2, bishop takes d2, c takes d2, check, king takes d2, and rook c8. And white resigned because of the attack on Titan here. Again, I didn't go over any deep analysis. I just wanted you to see the general attacking themes in the position of opposite wing castling. Now we can move on. Okay, so now we want to move on to our next example of a series of examples, rather, where white will kind of wander with the king in the middle of the board, not committing to castling one side or the other. This game is from 1985 from Viscount Zay with Alexander Beliavsky with the white pieces and British Grandmaster John Nunn with the black pieces. So here we have our typical Samisch variation, and we can see here that with the king staying in the middle like this, black chooses to break open the position on the king side. And you'll see in other examples, other plans also. Because if the king stays in the middle of the board, it doesn't really matter which side of the board you decide to break open. Um, it's just the important thing is to open the position. You definitely want to open the center if the king is just lingering in the middle of the board. And this is what Nunn does right here. So after this, move g4. Nunn plays rook takes f3. G takes h5. And then plays queen f8 with this powerful threat down on the f file. So now the king is kind of forced to stay since castling queenside at this point will lead to rook takes f2, knight e4, bishop h6, and notice the initiative that black has. Queen f4, knight e2, and now rook takes f2, very powerful move. Knight takes f2, knight f3 check, king d1, queen h4 now attacking the knight on f2, knight d3, and now pinning the knight on d3. I mean, Nunn's attack just will not let up. So knight ec1, knight d2, h takes, bishop g2, knight takes c4, queen f2, knight e3 check, king e2, queen c4. The rook comes into play, rook g1, knight c2, king d1, and now just bishop takes d3. And Beliavsky was forced to resign. So a brutal game. And just recall also that Beliavsky was probably ranked 3 or 4 in the world at the time. So very strong game by Black. But again, I didn't go into any analysis on purpose, but I just wanted you to see the general direction of attack that Black will take when the white player does not castle. He's either going to break open the position, uh, you know, at one of these 2 points. Either it's going to be here on e4 or here on c4. Right? These are the 2 breaking points. So typical beginner chess will tell you that if the opponent stays in the middle of the board, just simply begin to open up the position. Here is a more dramatic example of when White's king stays in the middle of the board. This game is between Grandmaster Suet Italic with the white pieces and Anthony or Tony Miles with the black pieces. This game took place in 1993. So there's our Samisch again. And we see that White's king is just staying in the middle of the board. And as long as White has this, solid pawn structure, where the position is kept closed, he has nothing to worry about. So it's up to Black to open up the position as best he can. So Miles plays h6, bishop e3, and then immediately starts exchanging. E takes d5, knight takes d5, and now queen takes d5. b5 immediately trying to open up the position. C takes, b takes, and now knight c1, bishop c6, queen d2, and now here comes the attack on the other flank. Again, now the king's position starts looking drafty. And notice that Miles was willing to sacrifice a pawn. In these situations, the initiative is often worth exactly that. So queen e8, Queen takes c5, so some more material drops. But black doesn't care. He's trying to open up the position at all costs to get at the king. Knight d3 check. And now the exchange is forced, and now the king definitely become exposed. There's a fork here, so knight takes d3, e takes d3, to king f2, rook c8, just putting the pressure on. Queen c4, king h8, queen d3, g5, still striving to open up the position. After all, if white is able to consolidate here, uh, he's just up material. So black is almost forced to, um, win the game in the middle game. Queen e8, g takes f4, bishop c5, f3. Again, that's opening the position at all costs. Queen takes e8, f takes d2. Bishop takes f8, and then beautiful move by Miles at the end is he takes, he takes on h1 with the pawn, but turns it into a knight so that he has check. And Italic had to resign. But again, you saw brutal and fierce response to whites staying in the middle of the board. Our last example of white's king staying in the middle of the board is from Linares 1993, which was won by Gary Kasparov, I believe. And this game is between Anatoly Karpov with the white pieces and Gary Kasparov with the black pieces. So Samisch, and I believe Karpov started playing this against Kasparov, and I think in their 1987 match, where he actually used it pretty effectively. But by this time, 1993, Kasparov had some remedies for the problems that he had faced earlier. And we can see here again Karpov choosing to stay in the middle of the board with his king. So a6, d takes, and now Kasparov plays knight takes e5 with the threat against the c pawn. So b3, b5 from Kasparov, c takes, a takes. And now notice that although black is down the pawn, right, he's going to be able to create a fantastic initiative here. So knight fd7, f4, and b4, and now the fight is on for the initiative. Knight b1, knight g4, bishop d4, bishop takes, queen takes, and now rook takes a2, h3. Nope, not backing the knight up, but c5, continuing to push forward. Another strong move in this position is queen h4 check. The only move really is g3, which could be met by rook takes e2, king takes, and queen takes g3. Back to the game, c5 is played, hitting the queen. Queen g1, and now knight g f6. And again, look at white's absolutely horrible development. Okay, so not only is the material now equal, right, because he had tried to steal a pawn earlier, he had to give the pawn back, and his position is in shambles. And this is just amazing, just seeing a play of Karpov's character having or Karpov's level having a position like this with the white pieces. Well, Kasparov continued after Karpov's e5 is just simply knight e4, h4. Karpov just doesn't have any good moves. c4 from Kasparov, Knight c1, and here Kasparov plays c3. Um, a stronger move than that is just simply rook b2 here, and say if knight d2, knight takes, and if rook takes, then simply rook takes d2 again, with the idea of after king takes on d2, just a brilliant discovered attack with knight takes e5. The c3, this gives Karpov a chance to get back into the game again. He plays knight takes a2 here, and then c2, queen d4, and now c takes d1 queen, king d1, knight dc5, and yes, Karpov can trade queens, but at this point he's totally busted in his position. King c2 and knight f2. And Karpov resigned after only 27 moves. So what's the point? Again, you should have it by now, is that when the king is in the middle, that's when you want to attack vigorously in order to open up the position. That is very important. If he can just consolidate a castle by hand, then he'll just equalize or play the game as if he had castled. So you want to try to catch the opponent's king in the middle of the board, and usually that takes some dynamic play via pawn sacrifice. Last but not least, we're just going to look at the traditional classical response wherein white just castles on the king side, and most of you, I'm sure, familiar with this. This game is from 1936. Gideon Barksa with the white pieces, and Leonard Abramovich with the black pieces, and we could see already in 1936 in these early infancy days of the King's Indian that already the plan with f5, f4, etc., and g5 was well known, and we can see white has castled, of course, f4, bishop f2, g5 with the vigorous attack. Again, the underlying principle is that, again, in positions where usually there's symmetrical, same side castling, or the position is pretty much symmetrical, the player that can gain the initiative first usually has a great chance of having the better game. In these King's Indian positions, usually when both sides are castled on the same side, black will pursue a king side attack with f4, f5, g5, f4, etc. And white will usually try to play on the queen side with moves like b4, c5, etc. Open up the c file and use that. So speed of attack is important, and you also see a lot of pawn sacrifices and sometimes piece sacrifices from black. This game continued knight d3. The pawns kept racing up the board for black. h5, c5, knight g6, bishop d7, knight e1, g4. And you can just see black building up as he should on the king side. g3, forcing the position open. Bishop g3. And again, there's the piece sacrifice. Pawn sacrifice. Exploiting the pin of the pawn on f3. Queen h4, threatening mate, and attacking the bishop on h2. So bishop h8, a6, using the rook to protect the second rank, but the bishop goes. King e2, queen g1, queen b1, and knight f4, and black had won that game. White resigned. This next position between Walter Brown with the white pieces and Miguel Quinteros with the black pieces from the Manila Interzonal 1976. Black to move, played f5, e takes, g takes, bishop d3, king h8, f4. Common plan to try to stifle black's dreams on the king side rather. Rook f8, and black is doing a good job building up on the king side, although white is trying to do the exact same thing. Yeah, sacrifice of a pawn for the initiative. And here, just do white fell victim just tactically here because of this rook on f1 is hanging. This bishop can't move. In this last example, we see Boris Gulko versus Judith Polgar. And here, white is just castled, and now black plays knight h7, preparing for the traditional king side assault here. Notice in this position, black plays on both sides of the board here, as you can see at the b5. And white, excuse me, black went on to win this game in 55 moves in a long ending. But I had just again wanted you to see just the nature of attack and the general plan that black would pursue in such positions where white castled on the same side of the board. Okay, so normally black will go for the traditional King's Indian attack that most of us are familiar with f5 and uh, f4 sometimes and g5, etc. But also remember that black can also play on the other side of the board on the queen side. So that pretty much wraps up this video. Again, showed you three general plans with some games attached to them. So with examples of white castling queen side when white tries to stay in the middle of the board and when he castles king side. So I suggest just go over the video a few times and then go start playing some blitz games in those particular variations. Um, Please click on the links below, support my channel, please donate, and also notice there's DVDs and books down there in the links also, um, and they're all going to be related to whatever opening that we spoke about in the video. So today, talking about the King's Indian defense. So, um, you know, check it out, and I look forward to hearing back from you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.